I had been enjoying the serene isolation of the woods, the chirping of crickets, and the sounds of trees my only company. It was a peaceful weekend getaway, just me, a good book, and the sounds of nature. I set up my tent in a small clearing, lit a fire, and settled down with my book, the smell of rain mingling with the scent of pine. The wind starting to intensify, I pulled my blanket tighter around me, listening to the rain start to pitter-patter against the tent. It was soothing at first, but the gentle sound quickly escalated into a relentless downpour, drowning out everything else. I was lost in my reading when I heard a loud crash outside, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching my campsite. My heart raced. I hesitated, but then decided to unzip the tent and peek outside. That's when I saw him, a man stumbling through the trees, drenched and clearly in distress. He was clutching his sides and looked around wildly, as if searching for something or someone. "Hey," I called out, trying to make my voice heard over the storm. "Are you okay?" He turned to me, his face illuminated by the lantern I had set up outside. "Please help me," he gasped, his voice barely audible above the rain. "My name's Paul. I got caught in the flood. My tent. It was swept away." I quickly gestured for him to come closer. "Get in here," I said, my heart pounding from a mix of fear and empathy. As he entered the tent, I wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. "You must be freezing." "Thank you," he said, his teeth chattering. "I've been wandering in the rain for hours. I thought I'd never find anyone." I tried to focus on the warmth of my lantern, but something about him made me uneasy. His eyes were wild, darting around the tent as if he were expecting someone to come after him. I forced myself to relax, telling myself it was just the cold and rain. "Are you camping alone?" I asked, trying to make conversation to distract myself from the gnawing worry in my gut. "At first, I was with some friends," Paul said, rubbing his arms as if trying to generate warmth. "But we got separated in the storm. I think they're gone now." He had mentioned friends, but I noticed how his story kept shifting. One moment he was alone, the next he was adamant about his companions. The inconsistencies made my skin crawl. I tried to shake it off, focusing instead on my book, but I found it impossible to concentrate. Every time I glanced at him, he seemed more agitated, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Are you sure you're okay?" I asked, my voice steady despite the unease curling in my stomach. "Yeah, just tired," he muttered, but his voice was shaky. As the hours dragged on, the rain continued to pour, a steady reminder of the chaos outside. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Paul. I needed to stay awake, to keep an eye on him. It felt wrong to let my guard down. Suddenly, Paul sat up again, more alert this time. "I think I heard something outside," he said, his voice low. "I heard it too," I admitted, my heart pounding. "But let's just stay inside. It's safer." He looked at me, narrowing his eyes. "Why? What are you hiding?" I could feel panic rising in my chest. "I'm not hiding anything," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's just not safe to go out in this weather." For a moment we just stared at each other, the tension thick in the air. Finally he nodded slowly. "Okay, you're right." We fell into silence again, but the unease lingered. I could feel something terrible brewing. Out of nowhere, Paul lunged at me. I scrambled back, my heart racing as I tried to get away, but he was fast. "Paul, what are you doing?" I shouted, trying to pull away from his icy grip. "I can't let you leave," he said, his voice shaking. "You know too much." "I don't know anything," I yelled, struggling to free myself. His grip tightened, and I could feel my breath quickening. Desperation surged within me, giving me the strength to twist my body. I kicked out with my legs, managing to knock him off balance. He let go, and I scrambled to the other side of the tent, grabbing the lantern. "Stay back," I warned, holding it up like a weapon. Paul stood up, his face twisted with rage. "You can't stop me," he snarled, advancing toward me. In that moment, adrenaline coursed through me, and I swung the lantern at him, hitting him in the shoulder. He stumbled back, and I took my chance, diving out of the tent into the pouring rain. I ran, my heart pounding, not caring about the mud and the cold. I just had to get away. I heard Paul shouting behind me, but I didn't look back. I kept running, breath coming in gasps until I saw the lights of another campsite in the distance. I stumbled into the camp, shouting for help. A group of campers rushed towards me, and I explained what had happened. They called the police, and we waited together, trembling and soaked to the bone, until they arrived. When the police reached my campsite, they searched the area but couldn't find Paul. "You're lucky to be alive," one officer said, and I nodded, still in shock. I never went camping alone again after that night. It was a lesson learned. The woods could be beautiful, but also treacherous, filled with shadows that could hide unspeakable dangers. I had trusted my instincts, and they had saved me, but the memory of Paul's wild eyes haunted me long after the rain had stopped. Camping in the great outdoors has always been one of my favorite ways to escape reality. My friend Jenny and I had finally managed to cart a weekend for ourselves. The excitement was palpable as we set up our tent by the shimmering lake. We spent a few hours there, enjoying the view of the lake. The water was moving slowly and the sky above was completely clear. We were absorbed in our conversation. Then just suddenly, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Clouds rolled in, heavy and dark, blanketing the sky with an ominous weight. The wind picked up, whipping through the trees and sending a chill down my spine. "Looks like we might be in for a storm," Jenny said, her voice tinged with concern. I tried to brush it off, thinking a little rain wouldn't hurt us. But as the first drops began to fall, a sense of unease settled in my stomach. We zipped up the tent and huddled inside, the patter of rain soon transforming into a relentless downpour. That's when we heard it, a murmur of voices outside, cutting through the rhythm of the rain, sounding close and suspicious. "Eric, did you hear that?" Jenny's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes wide with anxiety. My heart raced as I nodded, trying to discern what was happening outside. "Maybe it's just the wind?" I suggested, but the tremor in my voice betrayed my own uncertainty. Then, without warning, the tent flap was pushed open. A figure stumbled in, panting and wild-eyed. "Please, I need help. My name is Mike," he gasped, almost collapsing on the ground. "I was camping nearby and I saw a poacher in the woods. He chased me." My stomach twisted in knots. A poacher? Was this guy serious? I glanced at Jenny, who looked equally startled. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I swear I saw him. He's been hunting illegally in these woods, and when I stumbled upon him, he started chasing me. I barely escaped." Mike's eyes darted toward the tent flap, panic etched on his face. The storm raged outside, the wind howling as if in agreement with his tale, and I felt a chill creeping up my spine. "What does he look like?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Big guy, camo clothing, and he's definitely armed," Mike replied, his voice trembling. Jenny and I exchanged worried glances. "We can't just let him out there alone," she said, her voice wavering. "What if the poacher finds him?" Before we could come up with a plan, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the woods, and my heart dropped. "He's close," I hissed. "We need to get out of here." With no time to think, I grabbed Jenny's arm and pulled her toward the back of the tent. "This way," I shouted. We squeezed out through the back flap, the rain drenching us instantly as we bolted into the dark woods. My mind raced as we stumbled through the underbrush, branches snapping underfoot. I could hear the poacher's voice booming behind us, promising he would find us, and the fear gripped me like a vice. "Eric, where are we going?" Jenny cried out, her breath ragged as we darted deeper into the trees. "I don't know. Just run," I yelled back, adrenaline pumping through my veins. My heart hammered in my chest, drowning out the sound of the rain. We zigzagged through the woods, the darkness enveloping us, and just as I thought we might be able to catch our breath, we spotted a dark opening in the hillside. "A cave!" "In there!" I shouted, gesturing toward it. We tumbled inside, shivering as the cold air hit us. The cave felt damp and eerie, but it was our only option. We huddled together, our breaths quick and shallow as we strained to hear any sign of danger. The heavy rain masked the sounds of the outside world, but every rustle sent my heart into my throat. "What if he finds us?" Jenny whispered, clutching my arm. "We can't let that happen," I replied, trying to sound brave even as fear gripped my gut. "We just have to stay quiet until morning." Time stretched on, and my mind raced with thoughts of what might happen next. Would the poacher be lurking just outside the cave, waiting for us to make a sound? My imagination spun 1,000 scenarios, each more terrifying than the last. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as we sat in the darkness, the cold seeping into our bones. The minutes dragged on, and just when I thought we might be safe, I heard it. A faint crunching sound, followed by a voice calling out. "I know you're in there. The poacher." My heart dropped. "We have to move," I whispered urgently, my eyes wide with fear. I could see Jenny's panic mirrored in Mike's face. We slipped out of our hiding spot, creeping toward the cave entrance, where the rain had lessened to a light drizzle. "On the count of 3, I said, glancing at my friends. "We run for the trees, stay low, and be quiet." "Okay," they both nodded, the fear palpable in the air. 1, 2, 3. We burst out of the cave, the cool rain drenching us once again as we sprinted toward the safety of the trees. My heart raced, pounding in my ears as we darted through the underbrush. The poacher's voice echoed behind us, filled with rage. "Get back here! Faster!" I yelled, pushing myself to run even harder. We reached the edge of the woods, and there it was, a ranger station in the distance, a beacon of hope. "There!" I shouted, pointing ahead. Just as we made a dash for the door, the poacher's voice roared behind us. "You can't escape!" "Run!" I yelled, adrenaline propelling us forward. We reached the door, bursting through it and slamming it shut behind us. I was breathless, my heart pounding as I gasped for air. "Help! There's a poacher after us!" I managed to shout, and the rangers inside sprang into action. They quickly assessed the situation, grabbing their gear and heading out to confront the threat. "Stay inside and lock the door," one ranger instructed firmly. We huddled together, shaking from the adrenaline and fear, waiting with bated breath. Minutes felt like hours as we stared at the door, every sound making us jump. Finally, the rangers returned, their expressions grim. "We found him," one said, relief flooding through my veins. "He's in custody now. You're safe." A wave of relief crashed over me, and I sank onto a nearby bench, the tension finally leaving my body. Jenny and Mike sat beside me, trembling but safe. "I can't believe we made it," Jenny said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Neither can I," I replied, still trying to catch my breath. That was way too close. As we sat there, the reality of the night's events began to sink in. I glanced at my friends, grateful we had stuck together and made it through. We had faced fear and danger, but together we had found our way to safety. So, when my friends and I decided to go camping, the first day was idyllic, filled with laughter, campfire songs, and the comforting scent of pine. We set up our tents near a clear stream, the sound of water dancing over rocks providing the perfect soundtrack for our adventure. But as night fell, the atmosphere changed. A heavy fog rolled in, and the distant trees seemed to whisper secrets. I shrugged off my unease, chalking it up to exhaustion. After all, I had spent a long day hiking and exploring. But as I lay in my tent, the soft patter of rain began to drown out the tranquil sounds of the forest. I couldn't sleep. It was as if the rain had a rhythm, pulling at my nerves like an old song I couldn't quite remember. I peered out through the small opening in the tent, the world outside cloaked in shadows and mist. I swore I saw something move in the distance, just beyond the tree line. It was quick, darting between the trunks, always out of sight when I turned my head. My heart raced, but I shook my head, convincing myself it was just the branches swaying in the wind. The next day, the rain continued to fall, heavier than before. We decided to hike to a nearby lake, hoping the scenery would lift our spirits. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My friends chatted cheerfully, but I felt an unsettling weight pressing down on me. Every so often, I would glance over my shoulder, half expecting to find someone, or something, trailing us. When we finally reached the lake, the clouds loomed ominously overhead. The water was dark and still, reflecting the gray sky like a glassy mirror. It was beautiful, yet something about it made my skin crawl. I suggested we head back, feeling an urgency I couldn't explain. As we retraced our steps, I couldn't shake the sensation that we were not alone. That's when we stumbled upon it, a dilapidated cabin tucked away in the trees. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, its wooden walls weathered and gray, the windows dark and lifeless. My friends seemed intrigued, their curiosity piqued by the mysterious structure. "Let's check it out," Jake suggested, already moving towards the door before I could voice my hesitation. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint smell of mildew. We stepped carefully over the creaking floorboards, our flashlights illuminating the room in sweeping beams. Cobwebs hung like curtains in the corners, and old furniture lay covered in dust. But it was the wall that caught my eye. A series of photographs were pinned haphazardly, all yellowed with age. My heart sank as I moved closer. Each photo depicted smiling faces of campers, their expressions frozen in time. Yet as I studied them, a chill crept over me. A small note was taped below each picture with names and dates. Missing, one read, dated just a few weeks after the photograph was taken. My throat tightened as I read through the names, each one familiar in its own way, like a whisper of forgotten memories. "Guys, look at this," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. My friends gathered around, their expressions shifting from curiosity to unease. "Who are they?" Emily asked, her voice trembling slightly. I couldn't answer. I felt a gnawing dread deep in my gut. The storm outside intensified, the rain hammering down against the cabin roof. Thunder rumbled like a warning growl, and I felt the need to leave, to escape this place. But as I turned to suggest we go, I noticed a movement outside the window. A shadow shifted just beyond the trees, a figure barely visible against the backdrop of rain and mist. "Did you see that?" I breathed, my voice barely above a whisper. "What?" Jake asked, but before I could answer, a loud crash echoed outside, causing us all to jump. It was as if the forest had come alive, branches snapping and leaves rustling with unseen energy. "Let's get out of here," I urged, my heart pounding in my chest. But my friends seemed transfixed by the photographs, unable to look away from the eerie evidence of those who had vanished. Just then, a loud bang on the door made us all jump. We froze, exchanging terrified glances. "What was that?" Emily whispered, her face pale. "I don't know," I replied, my heart racing. "We should leave, now." Before I could take a step toward the door, the sound came again, a heavy thud, followed by a low growl that sent chills racing down my spine. "We're not alone," I murmured, feeling the dread settle deep in my bones. In a frenzy, we scrambled toward the door, but the sound continued to echo around us, a rhythmic beat that felt like a heartbeat of something monstrous. As we reached the door, it burst open, rain pouring in as a shadowy figure filled the threshold. It was a man, his face obscured by the hood of a drenched jacket, but the intensity of his gaze burned through the darkness. "You shouldn't be here," he growled, stepping forward, his voice low and threatening. I pushed past him, panic overtaking me. My friends followed suit, darting into the rain-soaked forest. The trees loomed ominously around us as we sprinted through the underbrush, the sound of the storm drowning out our terrified breaths. As we stumbled away from the cabin, I risked a glance back. The man stood in the doorway, his form swallowed by the shadows, watching us with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I could feel his eyes boring into my back, and it pushed me to run faster. We ran blindly through the forest, branches clawing at us as we fought against the rain and the growing darkness. I could hear my friends gasping behind me, their fear mirroring my own. All thoughts of our camping trip vanished. All that mattered was escape. Finally, we broke free from the dense trees and emerged onto a dirt road. We waved frantically, our hearts racing with adrenaline and terror. A car pulled up, and we jumped inside, barely able to form coherent sentences as we explained our frantic flight. The driver, an older man with concern etched on his face, listened intently. "I'll take you to the nearest town," he said, his voice steady. As we drove away, I looked back at the forest, the rain still falling heavily, but I could no longer see the cabin or the figure lurking within. But the haunting memory would remain. The feeling of being watched would linger long after we were safe. I couldn't shake the image of the missing campers, their smiles forever trapped in time. As we drove on, I knew I would never return to those woods again.